ActBlue makes it easy to fuel advocacy that lasts. When your cause is in the news, or when you're making every season your giving season, we have modern fundraising tools nonprofits can use to build a grassroots community that can give in seconds and sustain your work for the long haul. Learn more about us at secure.actblue.com.
My small things might join small things other people do, and together they could grow to something big.
We're here getting ready for the food box distribution.
Support the United Way. They're making lives better.
To all our brave service members, thank you for your service and your sacrifice.
We've all been affected by cancer.
And because of you all, I am still in nursing school.
Thank you for your support throughout the year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we can be kind again and again and again.
Hey, Jamie.
Hi, Matthew. How are you?
Very good. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, I think we can get started.
All right. We are ready to roll. So welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining our interactive workshop today. Beyond Wealth Screening, Hyper-Personalization with a Complete View of Your Donors. We want to welcome all of the folks that are joining throughout the country, as well as all the dogs and cats that seem to be joining us as part of the webinars and thought leadership we've done throughout the year as well. Jamie and I have both banished ours for the sake of this discussion, but rest assured they are right outside our doors here. So really glad to have everyone on board. The sessions will be recorded, and we're also referring to a few resources throughout that we will make available both in this chat and otherwise as well.
Let's start sharing our PowerPoint.
Excellent. Yay. So if you'd advance to the next slide, Jamie, my name is Matthew Mielcarek. I am the Vice President of Analytics and Insight Strategy at a fundraising agency based in Dallas, Texas, called Pursuant. I will be serving as Ryan Carpenter's understudy today. We kind of look alike. He's not here today, unfortunately. He's the director of our market solutions. He, along with members of my team, have been working with Jamie and the Houston SPCA for just about a year, specifically on this work and on this engagement. And so we are super excited to share that with you today. Jamie, I'll have you introduce yourself as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Spiva. I have been with Houston SPCA for literally just 1 year. I'm the Senior Director of Leadership Giving, and we'll talk a little bit more about my role down the road here. But we're so excited to be here today and to have this chance to present with Pursuant, who has been instrumental in our success with our major gift and mid-level giving programs.
Awesome. Yep. I'll also mention we're joined by Leah Davenport in the background, also from Pursuant. She's a senior marketing manager. And along the way, as you have questions, we would invite you to submit them in the comments area. It's over to my right. It's probably to your right as well. So along the way, if you have questions, thoughts, please share your feedback. And at the conclusion of our session today, Leah will circle back and share those with us, and we can get a little bit of interactivity going with our discussion. So why are we here today? We want to explore the use of data, the use of hyper-personalization to get a complete view of your constituents and of your donors so that we can strengthen relationships. So we're going to go into why that's important in a little bit more detail. We want to share some of the story of the Houston SPCA journey with you. And as Jamie mentioned, she joined the organization, moved to Houston just over a year ago, and has really developed and grown that program. And what we all know have been very difficult and tricky times, and the results are really incredible. And so again, it almost feels monumental, Jamie, to share this a year later on that anniversary as a bookend to explore and see the results of that effort. And so I hope Jamie's story will ring true with a lot of your own. We'll talk about the goal of personalization. So why invest? Why spend time? Why change your business as usual to do this? We'll look at some ideal audiences, and then ultimately we'll work to define success. For each of these areas, as I mentioned, today is designed to be a workshop. So we want to share a little bit of the Houston case study, the Houston story in each area. And then we hope that that stimulates you to think about personalization within your programs. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into why we are here and why focus on personalization, why you joined our session today. I'd like to start with a really big idea, and that is, hello, it is 2021, and we are all data companies. I think for those of us who have been direct response marketers, we often feel like we are only as strong as our database, but we really know that it is about those relationships and our ability to change and move and evolve our missions forward. But relationships are dependent on data in many cases, and that is our availability, our use of data, and using it within our organizations. So I wanted to frame first that we are all data companies, and hyper-personalization is the opportunity, the advantage that we all have at our fingertips, at our hands, for connecting and strengthening those relationships. So I'd say that it all begins with leveraging data in real time. If you look at data that you might have, whether it's a donor profile or transactions or otherwise, that exists on your file from 12 months ago, I know that that's going to be very different than data that you might have just from 3 months ago because of the craziness of the year that we've had. So the ability to leverage data insights really means we need to understand what is happening now, and it gives us insight into decision making for activities that are occurring today. Secondly, I'd also highlight that we want to use data to identify and create discrete populations of donors. What do our constituents have in common? And many times that is often more than demographics alone or affluence alone, but could truly be things like motivation, reasons for why a constituent might want to give. So I think that that will be incredibly important. And then lastly, we want to be able to create targeted communications and targeted journeys for all of those constituents. So the more that we know about motivations and our constituents in our universe, the better that we can prescribe a journey or an experience to them that best meets their needs, that talks to them in a way that resonates and drives them to that area of greater value for our organization. So why do it? I hit on this a little bit on our previous slide, and I would say quite simply, big idea here is that we know that strengthened relationships drive value. And that's pretty true wherever you sit within your own organization, from a major gifts officer who is able to have a conversation and learn more about a prospect, to someone who manages a website and who has the ability to ask a question like, why did you give today? Or what is your relationship to our organization? We know that if we can capture that information that's offered or volunteered by a constituent, that we can then apply and use that in subsequent conversations. It doesn't always need to be expensive or difficult to capture that information. And like I've mentioned, it often goes beyond wealth alone. And I think that that's fundamentally a big idea, in that if we can understand connection to mission or even relative connection to our organization, did you give to a peer-to-peer donor or because you adopted an animal 6 months ago that has become your family? Those are really different drivers for giving, and we can use and leverage that data and those insights to strengthen and build that relationship. Lastly, I would say that it all works together as well. And specifically what I mean by that is, why not use that affluence information that can be meaningful along with those motivations or drivers for why someone gave or the way that they entered our organization, even if it was in a non-financial way. So all of those things really come together to support a multitude of fundraising and engagement goals. Today, we'll be talking about tomorrow's major gifts donors. So we'll be talking about cultivating major gifts prospects, but also we'll look at non-donor populations, or even ways that we can strengthen and grow, sustain our relationships. So regardless of where within the donor pyramid or even broader engagement at your organization, hyper-personalization allows us to understand where people are and then prescribe elevated treatments to drive them to greater areas of growth. I did want to highlight, and we're dropping a link over in the comments area, it's over at my right, a link to our workshop worksheet. And I would say that, frankly, these are a lot of the questions in our work with Jamie and her team that we've worked through, but we've distilled these for you into a simple worksheet where you can play along. And so it starts with declaring your goal. identifying who the audience is for that goal, and then determining what data you have to identify that audience and perhaps a data strategy for capturing that, how you'll deliver a message, and then ultimately how you will define success. So what we'd like to do now is pivot. I'd like to turn the floor over to Jamie to share the good stuff of the presentation and the incredible results that she and team have received over time. And then along the way, we'll challenge you guys to answer some of these same questions for your own organizations.
Thank you so much, Matthew. A little bit about Houston SPCA. We're the leading animal rescue organization in the Gulf Coast region. So we have experienced quite a few hurricanes and freezes and many other disasters in the area. We are not only all about adoptions and fostering animals, but we also have a cruelty investigation team. We have a 24-hour injured animal ambulance, and we're the only one in Houston. We also have the Wildlife Center of Texas. So we're not focused just on dogs and cats, which of course are wonderful, wonderful, and we do work with them, and they're a bulk of what we do. But we also work with farm animals, wildlife, exotic animals, and basically any single type of animal that comes our way, we would be able to care for them in one way or another. We've been around for nearly 100 years, and we're a fully separate 501c3 organization. So a lot of people see Houston SPCA and they instantly think, oh, we're looking at the ASPCA, and the wonderful commercials are horrible commercials, unless, depending on how you're feeling that day. But we actually are a separate 501c3 organization. We have no affiliation with ASPCA, and we receive no government funding. So, a little bit of background. We started working with Pursuant in March of 2019 on our digital marketing and direct mail programs. But during that process, Pursuant, along with our now Chief Development Officer, recognized the amazing potential in the mid-level and major gift areas. We'd never had any sort of seasoned professionals or anybody to really focus on those areas aside from working through capital campaigns. So in March 2020, Houston SPCA brought on 2 seasoned professionals, myself as the senior leadership giving or senior director of leadership giving, and also Pat Quinn, who has 30 years in major and planned giving experience. We wanted to find a very quick way to figure out where to start. So with this opportunity, we wanted to expedite things and really looking at how can we move people from our general giving to our mid-level giving, or our mid-level giving to our major gift giving areas. And so in June 2020, we began just very simple cultivation emails to major gift prospects.
So great. So step 1 is really critical, declaring a goal. Jamie talked a little bit about the transformation that the SPCA was going through and how resources had shifted. And so what we would challenge you guys to think about in terms of where to start is to state your vision. What is it that your organization needs from a growth perspective right now? In many cases, that is raising more money. But in other cases, we might see that acquiring more donors has taken on added importance today or in this landscape. For other organizations, you might sit more in the marketing side of your organization. So increasing engagement might be vital. And then we also often work with a lot of organizations who are seeking to diversify their revenue channels, particularly towards digital. So start with that vision. Next, we want to focus on developing a strategy. So how and what do I want to communicate, and who is the ideal audience? We'll talk a little bit more on that next. But there's a lot there. And so developing your strategy is really important. We'll talk about creating a timeline. So you need to know where this will begin and what your checkpoints are. And primarily that is for project progress reports and updates to show and illustrate momentum. Frankly, that could also be for illustrating value to leadership who have chosen to invest in these programs. And then lastly, also aligning with value. What are the objectives that we're hitting for, and how do we measure those along the way? So Jamie, back to you to share a little bit of your story on your goals.
Well, at Houston SPCA, we wanted to really establish some cultivation emails and personalize those emails as much as we possibly can, ensuring that they come directly from myself or my colleague, Pat, so that we're building some relationships and engaging our audience with the mission of Houston SPCA. Most of these people have had little cultivation or stewardship in any way. They just continue to give. They're giving through direct mail, and they've supported us, some of them for 20 or 30 years, but they just have never had that human connection to the organization. So, and of course, we want to increase our giving and retention within this group. So looking at future gifts, more meaningful engagement and giving levels, and strengthening all of that together in a cohesive mid-level and major gift program.
Yep. Yeah, I love that, Jamie. I remember at the beginning of this engagement working through your file, and we saw so much opportunity there because there was a really strong base of loyal, committed donors, but they had effectively continued their support for many years. But it was clear, it was obvious that that if we asked them to do more, they would be willing to step up to do so. And so I thought a mid-level strategy was a perfect opportunity really for that file. And so we'll see what those results are. You stated your goal. Now we want to determine who are the people that are best suited to help reach that goal. By that, we could mean people that we want to upgrade, people that might give a planned gift, people that might fill a gap between a general and a mid-level program. And so that's really this next step of identifying and exploring donor profiles. And so I think we talk about this in a few slides up ahead. At Pursuant, our strategists as well as our clients rely on a tool called the Giving DNA platform. It's a fundraising intelligence tool. And in this view, it allows us to explore audiences on our file and draw distinctions and identify differences. I'd say that those differences are particularly important when we start to talk about experience and unique treatments, because if we learn that a channel of interest or an audience of interest prefers a specific channel, then we know that that's where our messages need to be directed. Quite simply, that is how we reach them. So when we think about our donor profile and the individuals that we want to pursue, we need to explore, kick around, and ask who will help reach that goal? What do they look like? What do they care about? And then where do they live? so that we can initiate and engage relationships with them. And the example you see here to the right, this is from our Giving DNA segment profile snapshot. What we're able to do is look at and explore and contrast overall donors, your broader file, and that's what we see over at the left. And then over at the right, we can contrast that to our social media influencers and active users. So here we see a lower typical age range, gender is pretty much at parity. We see that social media influencers are more likely to be professional technical, but net worth and household income is really about the same. The social media influencers also have slightly lower retention rates. So this is one example of exploring your file. We do a lot of these analyses, for instance, on new COVID donors. So donors who've given within the last year. We'll often do this analysis to determine if there are differences by channel. So our traditional direct mail donor versus our online donor. And then certainly we look at this by programs, inception program and program areas too. But the gist is explore your file, identify segments of interest, and this is a way to do that for us. Once you have an ideal audience in mind, an idea of the attributes that those people hold, we now want to do an inventory on your database to determine what you need to obtain, what do you have, and what do you need to get. I would call this really a data strategy for relationship building. And I would frame the data that you have as really your first party data. What do you know about your constituents? What have you done a good job really of capturing and collecting? From there, you can augment that data, those insights with third party data. So using and appending consumer information, consumer insights. And then lastly, I'd also encourage folks to really think about their zero-party data strategies. And by that, quite simply, I mean asking your constituents what their interest or affinity is to you and ensuring that you're capturing that. You may not be there right now or today, but at this point, as you're kicking off your strategies, it's saying, what can we make use of? What data do I have really at hand?
So a little bit about Houston SPCA's major gift prospects. Let me step back, actually. As many of you probably do out there, Pat, my colleague, and I, we don't just have responsibilities for major gift portfolio management. In fact, I oversee a team of 4 professionals, including Pat, and we're also responsible for corporate and foundation giving, a capital campaign. We have special gifts. We have planned giving. We have, our events, and probably other stuff in there as well. So lots of different hats that we're wearing. And we had thousands of prospects right there ready to give for us. So we wanted to be quick about figuring out who are the best people. Who's going to rise to the top? Now, I could take days and days and days to do that, but with a click of a few buttons and a short conversation with Ryan, who's not with us today, but he and I spent about 15 minutes and identified a few hundred major gift prospects that really, truly, over the past 9 months or so, we've been focusing on cultivating. Our major gift threshold is $10,000, and we look at our mid-level donors is $509,999.99. So anything under $500 would then be our general gift level. And we had every indication that they would be giving, that these people, this segment of donors, could give more. They had given to other organizations. They had interests in animal welfare, and they loved the opportunity to communicate digitally. So we weren't just looking at, you know, a wealth score. We were looking at hyper-personalization to determine if we establish this email series, we can actually, excuse me, pick out who will best respond to email versus, you know, my grandmother who perhaps doesn't know how to use email at all.
Yep.
Excuse me. So those insights, that group, they were annually giving between $500 and $2,500. That's where we started. And we continued to solicit the prospects via direct mail and digital marketing. We didn't cut anything out. We just added the email series. Because they preferred digital communication and giving, that increased their likelihood of engagement with us in a very meaningful way. They had given donations of $500 or more elsewhere. And so we knew that we really wanted to look at getting a greater share of their wallet. They had discretionary spending of $25,000 or more, which was all disposable income, and net worth of over $2 million. So this group was full of potential. And all of these insights led us to believe that we had a great pool of people to start cultivation, specifically these cultivation emails, and to be moving them forward towards the major gift level.
Jamie, a quick question on this slide. So the first data point, you know, I'd very much think of that as first-party data. That's information you knew about about your constituents based on their behavior with your organization.
That's correct.
Then, correct me if I'm wrong, but the remaining 4 data points are really third-party insights and third-party information. So some of that are affluence markers that might be, you know, we would see traditionally with wealth screening, like discretionary spending and net worth. But we're also seeing insight on their ability to make mid-level gifts and their behavior making mid-level gifts to organizations other than your own. I mean, that's like almost the gut punch. And so it's having all of that information together that really helped you to target these folks. Absolutely.
And going back to what I was saying before, in 15 minutes, we were able to identify this information through Giving DNA.
Wow.
So it was honestly like the most joyful, exciting experience. When I was sitting there, I think I almost burst into tears when Ryan was like, well, let's talk about your donor profile and figure out who do we think will be your best prospects. And he just clicked some buttons, and now I'm able to do that as well with the Giving DNA platform. And so it's been an experience that, for those who have been in fundraising for 20 plus years like myself, you know, 10 years ago, I would be sitting down with, you know, different long lists of data and different data points that we appended from 2 years ago. And it's not real time. But I would take all of that information and spend days and even weeks to try and come up with a group like this. So it was an aha moment and just a real clarification on where things are in terms of third-party data today versus, you know, 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one more question for you too. So I know, looking at your data previously, you mentioned disaster response. And so certainly Hurricane Harvey donors were a significant influx of new donors to your organization, many who are out of state. And I talked about motivation a little bit earlier in the sense of, you know, those folks, typically disaster response donors, are way more transactional. I'm just wondering, how did you deal with them? Have you included them in these strategies? How have they performed?
So we made the decision to exclude our donors from Hurricane Harvey.
Okay.
And we were able to identify those people through their giving and tracking that we used Razor's Edge database. So we were able to identify who gave because of the hurricane and became a new donor. But that doesn't mean that some of those people self-identified over the past few years and have become mid-level donors and became then part of this process. So unless they had participated in additional giving since the hurricane, we did not include them.
Yep. Okay, cool. Great to know. Thanks. Thanks for sharing that. And I mean, my big follow-up question too, I don't know if you've landed there, but how will you treat 2020 donors in the future? And I feel like so many organizations are grappling with that. Are COVID donors disaster response donors? What are you going to do?
Well, we are working actually with Pursuant on the digital and direct marketing side to develop different journeys for our different types of prospects. If they came in through disaster giving, now they will have a pathway to learn more about us and engage. If they have, we have so many new foster parents and new adopters in 2020 because everybody wanted to have a furry vice president sitting next to them while they were working from home. So we actually have created different new donor welcome series that go out through email. We also have some surveys that will go out through the mail to engage these different sectors of donors in a way that we weren't able to back during Hurricane Harvey. We might have been able to capture some additional people had we had the capacity in our systems to do that sort of journey mapping.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. So a real focus on stewardship and retention in a way that previously wasn't possible because you didn't have the ability to segment and activate. Okay, well, that leads us to our next section, which is effectively delivery, or I even think about this as activation. So now that we know who those audiences are, now that we have identified opportunity on our file, how do we reach, engage, and motivate those constituents to act? I know, Jamie, you mentioned generally leveraging digital and leaning on digital. So do you want to share a little bit on your creative strategy?
Absolutely. So since March 2019, when our current chief development officer came on as a contracted consultant for 3 months, and she's still here, thank goodness. When she came in, we really focused, our whole program shifted to a donor-centric fundraising focus. And so our number one priority when putting this strategy together was to thank all of our donors over and over and over again. And we were able to do it in an automated process and in big groups, but at the same time, focusing on that hyper-personalization. We felt it was also important to provide updates and also check in on the groups because COVID, right? So any major gift fundraiser out there will tell you the best thing that you could do is to start seeing how your donors are, not asking for money, but truly just checking in on your donors. Yeah. And so we also shared interesting media coverage. We provided tips on disaster preparedness and other support for our pet owners. So we really wanted to take our messages and tailor them to this specific group. And I have some samples here. Now, excuse me. This email is actually a sample of something we sent to this particular segment. And the title of it was, "You Rescued 187 Abandoned Animals." Now, talk about clickbait, right? That there is going to make me open an email. And the text begins, and I know it's really difficult to see, but you will be able to download the slides later to actually read the text. But it begins by thanking them for their part in saving those animals. And it shares some of our statistics. Our abandonment rates during the pandemic were up 20% at that point. And they're still pretty much there, even a little bit worse now because of the freeze last month. It talks about ways for people to report animal cruelty, neglect, and abandonment, because we can't do our job if the public isn't telling us what's going on out there. You know, we have investigators, but 99% of our reports come from somebody calling and saying, my next door neighbor is not treating his pet well. And then offering a way for them to see the animals that they have saved. So we put into place in 2020 critter cams. So what that is we've got a puppy cam and a kitty cam, and we have a wildlife cam. So during the day, you can go to our website and check out some live animals, and who doesn't like to sit around and watch kitties climb and play, right? So we wanted to sell that idea to our potential donors, and honestly, a lot of them clicked.
Yeah. Jamie, I love the approach on, you know, that message to in just its sort of low tech personal manner. You know, I think that's really strong and meaningful.
Absolutely. All of these emails were a simple Microsoft Word mail merge into Microsoft Outlook. And so those of you who have never done that before, honestly, play with it. Build a 3 to 5 person email Excel list. Do a mail merge to, you know, your colleagues or people within the building, volunteers, whatever, as a test. And you will see you can do some amazing things just from your computer. We had the capacity to build this into something really fancy and send it through, you know, our email software that allows us to do newsletters and things like that. We didn't want to do that. We wanted it to seem exactly like it was, something coming from myself or Pat to share information, and as one-on-one as we possibly could. So the next email shared a link, this first one here on the left, to a video and a review of our efforts of the animals in need during our hurricane season last year. So we worked with a number of different animal welfare organizations across the Gulf Coast, and excuse me, and we wanted to make sure that people knew what we were doing. Houston was very lucky and was not hit with any real hurricane damage last year. And so, but we had the capacity to go out and help over 500 animals. And I think this was around the 200 mark at that point, but 500 animals during hurricane season. And then this last email is actually a Valentine's Day email that we sent out. And it was just a simple message encouraging them to leave Houston SPCA in their estate planning and talking about their loved ones, whether it's a pet that they need to care for, children, or other friends or family members, making sure that they had their affairs in order through planned giving. So wanted to share with you some really great responses we had from throughout this entire 9 months of sending out these donor emails. And so many times we've had donors thanking us. We share all of this sort of response with our program staff, but it's very difficult for our program staff to go out there and to be seeing the horrible conditions that these animals are in. Sometimes videos go viral and they're out there trying to find the person who kicked the dog 20 times or whatever that is. It's very frustrating for them and hurtful to them. So for us to be able to say, look, our actual donor population is so grateful. When we share information with them, they not only give, but they thank us for the opportunity to do so. All of these donors, as they respond, are actually self-selecting. So if you think about it, anytime somebody responds to an email, that instantly gives me a reason to make a phone call and to start moving them up the major gift portfolio prospects. So the guy that doesn't say anything, but the woman who calls and says, Jamie, just wanted to say thank you, all the wonderful things you've been doing. It really gives us the opportunity to kind
conversation starter.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting being on the receiving ends of these notes as a major gift officer. You know, over the years, it's not something that I've experienced a lot. You know, it's a different thing in the animal welfare world. So, you know, we called some of these individuals. You know, this group for the most part has not had much cultivation aside from our emails, but we did at the beginning of COVID, we made phone calls to everybody in this group to see how they were doing and to introduce ourselves. And then during the freeze last month, we looked at this group, used Giving DNA to determine who was over the age of 70 within the group and called them to see how the freeze affected them. You know, it was quite a strange situation, that freeze. So we were able to use Giving DNA to determine who needed extra support from us. And had they needed pet food, had they needed water, whatever, we were ready to go and to take care of our donors.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. So I'm going to close out with just one more section to talk about metrics and specifically defining success. And I see some questions coming in on the comment side and would encourage folks to drop in any questions you might have now for Jamie or myself. And we will wrap with jumping into some of those. But I wanted to talk about defining success and really measurement. Again, I talked about the bookend of Jamie and team having this year, this crazy year that has passed, and the ability to look back and say, how have we performed? How have we moved the needle? How have we engaged this population or constituency? And so we want to trace back and revisit these metrics and determine how the treatments, how the goals and the strategies that you have proposed have performed. It's not only your a financial goal, although often that might be the end goal, but in many cases it could be to create a population that never existed, increase engagement, or otherwise. The frame that we have here are financial goals, population goals, and then engagement goals as well.
So this is the really exciting part that I have been waiting to actually share with everyone. The key metrics, as Matthew was saying, financially through our population and engagement. And so I get to share with you that revenue from this specific segment of donors is up 51% in 2020 from 2019. Now, when you think about Houston, which has the oil industry, so the economy has tanked and the pandemic, and yet with barely nothing more than a monthly email to give them actual information of what's happening and to thank them for their past support, we were able to grow our financial revenue in this segment so heavily. It's
year one, amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. I think we might have set our bar too high, because now if I don't come up with 51% next year, what am I going to do? So anyway, the next piece is the donor health. And this is the one that literally gives me goosebumps. If you look here, and I think everybody can see my cursor, this is in 2019, the number of downgrades, the numbers who didn't give at all, we lost them, new gifts, upgrades, and the same giving. We have either upgraded or reactivated 60% of the donors in this population, and 98% retention from 2019 to 2020. That statistic is unheard of in any donor segment group. I mean, aside from maybe board giving, you know, it's remarkable. And to feel the support we had through our hyper-personalization process from Pursuant and to be able to use Giving DNA to make this happen. I mean, our entire team is just so grateful and truly ecstatic about the results. The last piece are the big wins, right? So they bring in 2 new major gift people last year, and they're going to want to see some 6-figure gifts. Well, we were able to receive a $100,000 gift after the first email. The donor had been on our file for 25 years and never given more than $2,500. And so this was amazing. He sent 1 email to me asking some quick questions, clarifying some things that he'd read online. And then in that phone call, when I followed up with him, he said, I'd like to come in tomorrow. I know that, you're not really open, but would you be able to meet me there so I can give you a $100,000 gift? And I had to, put on my mask and gloves and go make sure that happened, because you figure out a way to receive a $100,000 gift if somebody is asking you to do so. In total, we had 5 $100,000 gifts from 4 families who had never given more than $2,500 in a single prior year.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
With emails that we mail merged. It is, I'm not that great of a writer. So we hit the target on our population for this project. I will say that right now.
Wow.
We also, and it wasn't just about those $100,000 gifts, we also had dozens of people upgrade to $10,000 or more and become major gift donors in years that they hadn't before. So we honestly had some amazing key takeaways. With 9 months of this work under our belt and the amazing results we saw in 2020, we wanted to really, be able to share with you. It felt like these gifts were falling out of the sky, but they didn't. Our cultivation email series was so successful because we used third-party insights, Giving DNA, to identify prospects who would respond to this cultivation process. And the segmentation always leads to greater results. It allowed us to align our message with the channel, with the population, and greatly increase engagement. And I can say our third-party product, so user-friendly, capable of segmentation in a click of a button. I can build different segments in 5 minutes or less. And Pat, who is not nearly as technologically savvy as, anybody who walks in off the street, he's admitted, hey, I'm not your guy if you want some help with technology. But he can build segments right in Giving DNA. So it would likely have taken me days or possibly even weeks to pull the list together like this. In a 15-minute Zoom meeting with Pursuant and Giving DNA, we really just made this hyper-personalization possible.
Awesome. Jamie, thank you so much. So happy. There is nothing more gratifying for us than to hear those success stories and the impact on your mission that we can have too. So thanks for inviting us along on the ride and along on the journey. So really appreciate you sharing that. Leah, I will open it up to you for questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matthew. We've gotten a couple of questions from Beth. And I'd like to start with her second question, which is specifically about how did Houston SPCA measure engagement? I know that we've been talking about Giving DNA platform here and there, but what are some of those specific ways that you were able to track, how that engagement grew?
Well, because we did not use the fancy email system, we weren't actually able to track our clicks or anything like that. But we measured engagement by the number of people who, reached out to us via email or phone calls. And then we also looked at their giving in 2020. So did that giving increase? Did they give more frequently? And if they changed the method that they gave, maybe they gave online instead of writing a check. So there are a number of different ways we were able to track that. Now, in 2021, we have additional staff that we've brought on in our digital marketing team, and they are going to be able to help us to track some of these different data points in a better way. We're working on figuring out how to make it even more personalized and to do better engagement tracking.
Yeah, thank you. Beth had another question that was also around setting up this this mail merge, and it sounds like you use like pretty simple technology to get these emails out, which I know for a lot of nonprofits who have limited resources, it's probably really encouraging to hear that you don't necessarily need to have a really complex marketing automation or email automation platform. So, would love to just know a little bit more, just kind of using the technology you had available to you, how you were able to get some of these emails out.
Absolutely. I think many people in the development field probably know how to use Microsoft Word to do a mail merge letter to send out to someone. You can use that same process if you have Microsoft Outlook to send emails. There is hardly a difference between mail merging a letter to print and mail to someone versus mail merging an email into Outlook to send to someone. So we were able to take that process to reach these thousands of people in our prospect pool, and then personalize them a little bit more to the hundreds of people for different pieces. I actually can do a little presentation and drop it into the shared notes. I'll maybe record myself actually doing a mail merge from email so that all of you can take a look. I'll do that later today. So by tomorrow in the Google Docs, there'll be a link to a video on how to do that.
Jamie, thank you. That's really sweet and super cool. I didn't know that existed either. So I like it for the low tech approach.
Yep. Yeah. And it really speaks to the power of just how it's about having that right message, not necessarily having all the most fancy technology in the world.
Yeah.
Here is a great question from Tyler. And he would like to know, did you run into any issues with spam alerts on the merge with such large lists?
We did not. Excuse me. I don't know. I guess because the email was coming from an actual person. It came from, my email, which is jspiva@HoustonSPCA.org. And it should be in the Google Docs as well for you, should you have follow-up questions. But we didn't have any problems with that. We did have some people who, said, please don't email me anymore. I give and I'm going to continue to give. But I would say we had less than maybe 4 or 5 of those people over the course of 9 months. So we really did hit this targeted group pretty easily. None of these, 5 out of 2,000 people opting out is very, very good. And so as far as I know, there are some spam filters that will ask you to click here and identify who you are. And those were just automated returns. I probably got maybe 10 of them. And I just click on the button and put my name in and from Houston SPCA. And then those people can read the emails. So, but nothing that basically said no more emails or stopped us from getting through.
Jamie, a quick follow-up question. So for this population, you mentioned the emails, and you also mentioned the phone calls too, sort of during early days of lockdown. How did you treat this population in the mail? Did they receive standard appeals, special appeals? What's your plan?
Well, we left them and just gave them the standard appeal for 2020. Yep. Now in 2021, we do have, I think, a special appeal going out to this group. With the new team that's coming on board, or that just came on board this past couple of months, we are going to be able to better work collaboratively with the digital and direct marketing. Whereas when it was just major gift officers who didn't really work with that side of things, we didn't have the staffing capacity to do that level of personalization, but we do now. And so 2021 is going to be really fun to watch.
I think what I like about your story too is you didn't say that those things had to be in place for you to act. Instead, you've done it very much in a phased manner of, using your elbow grease to use Outlook for those, for a simple mail merge, throwing them into the standard mail program, recognizing it's not optimal. And you may have some folks who have a discordant experience, with you of, I do more, why did you send this to me? Or, I asked you not to email me previously, but considering that's a pretty small minority, and then really using that as a stepping stone to get to what does the year 2 experience look like?
Absolutely.
Neato.
We have just a few minutes left. Leah, do you see any other questions that have come in?
I am waiting for a few more questions to come in. A lot of the comments that are in the chat are all very positive, and giving you a lot of high fives. So that is great to see. One question or one comment that I really like also comes from our friend Beth, and she says, "I love that you used your calls to see what you could do for them rather than asking them for anything."
Yeah, especially during the freeze. A couple, I guess it's been a little over a month now. Our team basically shut down for a week, and all that development did is either call our donors to see how they were doing, or reached out to local vendors to get water, or I was literally assigned the laundry during the freeze. So I was in charge of how do we get all of this laundry taken care of when there's no water. So we all shut down, but most of the important things that happened, Pat was in charge of calling those 70 donors. And throughout the pandemic, we have been calling anybody who's given $500 or more on a regular basis. We've actually made that part of our standard stewardship process. So, and we're talking about even bringing it down a little bit further and engaging donors at the $250 level or more. We have not yet put that in place, but it is part of the hopeful plans for 2021.
Mm-hmm. I would love to know a little bit more, kind of in our final moment here. But what are some things that you're kind of looking to do in 2021 to kind of build on some of these insights that you've had about your donors? And I mean, you mentioned bringing in some more digital marketing folks to kind of expand the way that you're interacting, engaging with your donors and supporters. But kind of any final thoughts you'd want to leave folks with as they're going about their day?
I mean, now that we are a fully staffed team, it allows for me to do more exploring within our third-party platform to do some more personalization. And I just think to myself, if we were able to do what we did with just some simple emails once a month, what could we do if we could really dig in and do some more work with these people based on the hyper-personalization we can do with Giving DNA? So that's my plan for 2021, is to be able to utilize the time to really dig into the portfolios and to focus on the needs of those donors.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I think that brings us to the end of our time together. So Matthew, would you like to close us out?
I would just like to say thanks so much, Jamie, for the inspirational story. We hope you are chugging ahead this year along, and we can't wait to check in with you throughout the year to see where you guys land, hopefully back on your feet from COVID and from the freezes and otherwise. So likewise with other folks on the phone, Pursuant would be happy to share more detail with you on the Giving DNA platform or the strategies that we work with on clients that might be more closely aligned with your vertical. So feel free to reach out at any time. But thanks so much for having us.
Thank you very much for being here, Matthew, and for all the work you've done. My email and Ryan's email are in the Google Docs, but we'll add Matthew's in there as well. And just thank everyone once again for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.